ready to go, ready to get going here in summer in the Psalms. We are doing Psalm 15 tonight. And so if you want to prepare yourself for that, look forward to having some folks join us here in a minute so that we can dig into the Word a little bit. This is a simple, short psalm, and but it's packed, like many things are, with lots of good encouragement. And so we'll see who joins us, and we'll keep it fairly brief tonight. And anyway, I'm going to try to follow along here to see kind of what we have got going. Let's see. Nothing yet. Let's see if I can get Kingwood pulled up. No, I don't know. Anyway, hi, Melody McCarver. Thanks for joining me. Looks like it'll be at least two of us. Margaret Anthony. Thank you, Margaret. Glad you've joined in as well. And Rodney and Sandy. Myrtle Schaefer. Good deal. Good deal. All right, guys. We'll be in Psalm 15 this evening. Short 5-verse psalm. And if you want to turn to that and look at it real quick, I'm going to try to find our class Bible study here on Facebook, and I haven't found it yet. That's probably me, though. It's probably got nothing to do with technology. I don't think I'm going to find it. Anyway, I may find it here in a minute. Oh, there it is. Just found it. So, anyway, I'll be able to kind of keep up and see what the delay is, maybe, as well. Let's see who else has joined in here. The Hutchins are in. Good deal. Good deal. Stephen Cantrell, good afternoon, brother. Glad you're here. The Nances, good to see you. I've been praying for Brother Roy's treatment, and we'll continue to do that. Zimmerman's jumping on. Great, good deal. Summer in the Psalms. Here in just a few minutes, we'll be doing Psalm 15, in case you've just joined us. If you want to take a minute and locate that, then we'll read it. It's very brief. It is 5 verses, but I believe it's packed with some good, just basic stuff, and that'll be a blessing to us. And I see Kitty Walker. Hi, my friend. Oh, it's good to be a friend of Kitty, and glad that she still thinks that after this morning when I called her out. So the Taylors, good deal. Thank you guys for being such good encouragers for everybody, and me especially. The Browns, glad to have you on here. Sure, we'll have a few more join momentarily. Again, we are Summer in the Psalms, and Psalm 15 is our text tonight. It is a Psalm of David, very short, brief psalm. So if you want to take a minute and read those 5 verses to get kind of get on the page with us, we'll be good to go. All right, I'm sure we'll have a few more join us. Looks like it's about 4:59, so we'll give it another minute or two. Hope you're doing good. Got some good rain at the house, and it's a little bit cooler, so I'm thankful for that. We're kind of in those dog days of summer, as they say. So we're experiencing the heat, and so it's good to have some rain for the grass to kind of maybe cool some things off. And So that was a blessing today. The Guthries are tuning in here. I think we have a few others here that are popping up. Let's see. Ken and Shirley, present and accounted for. Awesome. Glad you guys are here. We'll get going in just a second with Psalm 15, and want to just remind everybody about that, and we'll start here in just a moment, and get going with our Summer in the Psalms series. So glad you've tuned in. Really am. It's encouragement to spend a few minutes in Bible study, and I see Jeff Brown is on here. Glad to see Jeff. Jeff, I assume you're still watching from the hospital. I think I announced earlier today that you hoped to get to come home, but I wasn't sure that had occurred and thought maybe you were going to have to spend another night. So looks like Mark and Alicia Dykus are watching as well. And the Burks, good job this morning. Thank you. I enjoyed doing it. Jeff had left me a really good section in the Sermon on the Mount. They're all good. They're all good. But, what an applicable section, timely. And, man, I tell you what, you could honestly preach about do not worry on any Sunday, and it would be spot on. But with everything going on, I loved the way that, it lined up as some comfort for us. All right, Jeff says, yes, sir. I'm still working on it. Thank you. Yes, sir, is the answer to the question about being in the hospital. So we're going to get you out of there, man. We're going to come break you out or something. I don't know. But I know that's frustrating, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. Maybe they'll get you straightened out with your medicines and stuff here really soon. So, all right, I've got 5:02. Let's jump right in. Summer in the Psalms. We are on Psalm 15. We may have a few more join us here in a minute, but I will continue to press on. So let's begin with a prayer, and then we'll begin our study. Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you for the rain. We thank you for the worship time this morning together in person and online. I'm thankful for my brothers and sisters that are continuing to seek you and in these unorthodox and strange times. Schedules are crazy. It's summer. There's a COVID increase going on. There is lots of political banter. There is questions about what to believe and what not to believe, and there is unrest in regards to our race relations here in this country. And Father, I just pray that you will allow us as your people to be people that represent you and represent your Son and are filled with the Holy Spirit as we try to be salt and light among our nation and our community. And Father, again, we thank you for your Son, Jesus, since through him we pray. Amen. All right, Psalm 15 tonight. Very short psalm. I don't know what that means, if we'll have a shorter class or not. I have no idea. But there's a lot of meat in here. Kind of like the passage I mentioned and discussed this morning. But Psalm 15, at the very top, it says, a Psalm of David. And I was reading somewhere earlier that 73 of the 150 Psalms, so that would be almost half, have some mention of David in their subscript. And, not necessarily that he was the author of each of these 73, but he's connected to them. So that's 50% of the Psalms, nearly. And so here's another one, Psalm 15, right here at the earliest part of the book of Psalms. And so let's read these 5 verses and then discuss them. It says, Lord, who may dwell in your sanctuary? who may live on your holy hill? He whose walk is blameless, and who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart, has no slander on his tongue, who does his neighbor no wrong, and casts no slur on his fellow man, who despises a vile man, but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps his oath even when it hurts, who lends his money without usury, and does not accept a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things will never be shaken. Very short, very powerful. I'm curious if there's any initial reactions to what I just read or what you've read from this. And so chime in if you have any thoughts about that. And I'm going to go ahead and start making some observations, but you go ahead and say, okay, this is different. This is unusual. I've noticed this. What's going on? And so I'll say this. The way it's structured is interesting. David starts out with a question, and he actually uses some parallelism on the first line. It's the same question stated twice. They're parallel. They're slightly different, but it's the same question. He says, Lord, who may dwell in your sanctuary? Okay. And then he says, who may live on your holy hill? Okay, so essentially the same, maybe some slight differences there in the Hebrew and then also in the imagery or in the specific locations, sanctuary, holy hill. We'll talk about that in just a second, but he's wanting to know, he's asking either literally or metaphor or figuratively, who can be in your presence? Who can be with you, God? What kind of person? Who is the kind of person that can be in your presence? And so it's interesting when he addresses the Lord. He says, "Who may dwell?" The Hebrew word for dwell is more like a visit, okay, like a sojourn, like a passing through. And if you think about it, hospitality in the Old Testament days, even New Testament days, was much different than it is now. What do we do when we travel somewhere? Well, we rent a place. We get a hotel. We do an Airbnb. If we have family, we may arrange our trips around stops in that way. But we are used to making those arrangements, paying for it, credit card, etc. Okay. And if you look in the New Testament, several of the letter, I believe it's is it 2 John maybe? 2nd or 3rd John is a hospitality letter of sorts where John's asking them to receive someone. We know Mary and Joseph, and as she was expecting, went to stay at the inn. It's just different the way people would stay. They would go for Passover and they would stay with family. If they were in the same lineage, not necessarily if they even knew them. And so there's all of these things going on with this word: abide, dwell, sojourn. Okay, so the first question is, Lord, who's going to sojourn in your sanctuary? I don't know if your version has anything else. It may have tent. It may have tabernacle. And all of those would be correct. I think literally the word would be tent. And the NIV has translated it sanctuary, thinking in terms of where God's presence is, right? This was before the temple. There was no permanent dwelling place in Jerusalem for God at this time when he was with his people. It was still in the tabernacle, still with the Ark of the Covenant. And so David is asking this question: who can be with you? We know the priests can, we know the singers can, we know so on and so forth can be in the temple, in the sanctuary, in the tent. All right, what about the second question that parallels? Who may live on your holy hill? Sorry, what holy hill? Well, is he talking about Jerusalem? Is he talking about a mountain somewhere? What's a significant mountain where God spoke to people, particularly like Moses? Is it Sinai? So, a lot of unknowns. There's nothing in the underlying notes about what's the occasion for this. We don't know. We can imagine, perhaps. Some have said it's when David is bringing the ark to Jerusalem and different things. I don't know. I do know this. He's asking, who can be with God? What kind of person? And who can dwell with him? So it's not just a flyby. It's a longer visit. It's a living with in that second question. So he's going to answer that question in the middle part of this psalm, and then he's going to end with a promise. And so I want us to focus on the middle part of this psalm, the kind of person that can be with God. And so let's look and see if there's any comments here. It looks like Kitty's thrown something out here. Several of his psalms are, Lord, do not leave me, please comfort me. This one is, how can he dwell with the Lord? It's almost a reversal. Yes, it is definitely a different kind of tone than the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, describing that. Lord, how long will you hide your face from me? Yes, this is a totally different kind of maybe deeply reflective, like he's really wanting an answer to this question. So something to consider. I'm looking to see if there's any comments on my stream here on my phone. I don't see anything else, but if you have any other comments, please throw those out there. So what kind of person? Let's look at this list. The list from verse 2 to the first part of verse 5, there's so many different ways that I saw this was kind of organized. There's some that say this is couplets. There's some that say this is, I guess, triplets. They're listed in threes. There's some who just list them singly. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. But there's at least 10 different things that describe the person who can dwell with God, who can be in God's presence. So why don't we run through those and kind of look at what's going on, see what we can figure out. The first description, verse 2, he whose walk is blameless and who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart. Well, I think the first line, he whose walk is blameless, is kind of the setup for the rest. He whose walk is full of integrity, some versions might say. The person who's walking with God, they are complete and solid, might be a literal translation. So that's kind of an odd thing, but you want someone who is filled up with God, and they are doing their best. They are stable, they are complete, they are whole, we might use in our day and time. But it's he whose walk is blameless. Okay? The next part of that, and who does what is righteous. Well, who does the right thing? That's the kind of person. The person whose walk is blameless, but who does what is righteous. Who does the right thing. And it gets more specific. Following that, it says, who speaks the truth from his heart. Who speaks the truth from his heart. So there's an aspect of the person who can be with God. They walk blamelessly. They do righteousness, right? They do righteous things. And they speak the truth from their heart. This is the picture of someone with integrity. With integrity. There's nobody can find anything to criticize them for. They're blameless. They're doing the right thing. They're saying the right thing. I love that this is what David is indicating. So let's look at verse 3. And these are kind of a negative twist on those first three. You'll see what I mean here in just a second, I think. has no slander on his tongue, who does his neighbor no wrong, casts no slur on his fellow man. So we're now kind of talking a little bit more about the speech aspect of this blameless walk. You know, you're speaking the truth from your heart, but you are having no slander on your tongue. Man, how common is that now to observe people slandering one another, whether it be in the media, whether it be in the, and I'm not taking sides, I'm just saying the tone of things and the way we backbite is sadly remarkable. And so the person who's going to be with God and dwell with God is someone who doesn't do that. They don't have any slander on their tongue. There's nothing right there ready to come out, bam, and nail somebody. Okay, you're not. It says, "Who does his neighbor no wrong." You live in peace and harmony with your neighbors. You are. This is the kind of person that can dwell with God, right? We've all had neighbors before that have probably, I mean, literal neighbors who have probably made life challenging for us. If you've lived in an apartment complex, if you have lived in a barracks somewhere, if you've lived in a dormitory, if you have lived in a neighborhood where the yards were really close, and or not. You could have been in a cubicle at work near somebody, or your desk is near somebody. We have all had neighbors, those in proximity to us, that we have struggled with. And so part of the challenge here of David, that he's saying this is the person who is dwelling with God, is the person who does his neighbor no wrong. You know, and I know that can be a real challenge when we have neighbors that are hard to get along with. Maybe we're the neighbor that's hard to get along with. I don't know. But then the next part, again, the speech aspect of this, he casts no slur on his fellow man or on his neighbor. So, you know, those two or three things that are talking about the relationship with our neighbors. We're not ready to do them wrong. We're not ready to talk bad about them. We are not going to slander or slur them. We are going to live at peace with them. Verse 4, let's continue on. It says, who despises a vile man, but honors those who fear the Lord. Now, this one might be a little interesting. You know, David says the person who can dwell in the sanctuary, live on the holy hill with God, is the person who despises a vile man. Now, I tend to think that this might be one of those cases where the New Testament ethic of Jesus has changed this some. Now, again, we're kind of splitting hairs a little bit here on this, but you know, when you say you despise a vile man, you know, we're commanded in the New Testament to love our neighbors. Now, we may despise their actions, but we are to love our enemies, to do good to those that do bad to us. We're to turn the other cheek and so forth. But at the same time, it makes you wonder, there needs to be a clear line between good people and those that are evil. And, you know, maybe sometimes we blur that line, you know. We like hanging around people that are not so good. And I mean, not for the purpose of evangelism. I mean, for the purpose of just, we enjoy maybe participating or doing things we shouldn't do. We get caught up in it. And I think that's more so, especially when we're younger. We're still trying to figure out who we are, hopefully. But it can still happen, regardless of our age. But so it's interesting. I'd be curious to hear what you had to say about who despises a vile man, and what your thoughts are about that. If that's something that we should kind of think about in terms of maybe the way Jesus would look at that. But either way, the second part we can adopt for sure. He honors those who fear the Lord. And maybe that's what he's talking about more, is the fact that taking sides, right? I know which side I'm on. I don't want to be on the side of evil. I want to be on the side of those that fear the Lord. And I'm going to honor those that fear the Lord. And so there's that that thought stated again in a positive way. Melody says, and I'll bring your comments up periodically as I see them. Melody says, it's interesting how much is mentioned about what we say. Words are powerful. It's true. Our words are very powerful. They can make or break people. They can make or break us. And sometimes we just throw them around. We slander, we slur, we discourage. We're not as good of stewards of those opportunities and those words as we ought to be. So that's an interesting comment and very, very valuable. Let's see, what is Kitty saying here? Sin and people actively living a sinful life can be exciting. Sin is attractive, or it wouldn't be tempting. True. And maybe that's I assume you're saying that in reference to the comment about despising a vile man. Okay? And so that's true. Maybe we should, if someone is actively engaged in sin, maybe we should, as Joseph fled that scene, maybe we should turn and go the other way too. So at a minimum, that's true. So lots of good comments there about those two things. Let's keep going. So who despises a vile man but honors those who fear the Lord? And then it goes on to say, who keeps his oath. And then there's this little jewel in there. Even when it hurts. Who keeps his oath even when it hurts. So, we've talked a little bit about speech. We've talked about how you take care of your neighbor. We've talked about how you view other people, how which group do you esteem more. And now we've got this comment here about promise keeping. And again, we talked a few weeks ago in the Sermon on the Mount, where let your yes be yes and your no be no. And the view of oaths. Well, we could extrapolate this out lots of different ways, but bottom line is, as we're talking about this person of integrity, they're keeping their oath even when it hurts. How many times have we made a promise or commitment, or signed up to do something and then found out later, some aspect of it, man, I wished I'd waited, or I wished I'd included that phrase, or I wished I had, not done that. And I'll give you an example. And this is one I was actually talking to my wife yesterday about in another context. But I made a commitment on the phone a few weeks ago, a month ago or so, when I was selling my car, the beautiful orange LT Gray Humility Mobile, whatever nickname you want to give it. I made a commitment to a guy who called me about it and said he was going to come look at it that afternoon, and he was going to pay this amount of money for it. And I said, okay. Well, I got over to the car. I was at my parents' and on the road there to be viewed. And I got there early, and he still hadn't showed up. And another person pulled up and said, I will give you what you're asking for your car. I'll give you full price. And I had already made a commitment to someone else for a discounted rate. And so it cost me, a few $100s, nothing earth shattering, but a few $100s. And so then, when they got there, I was a little disappointed because they wanted to negotiate. And, I was gritting my teeth thinking, I wished I hadn't done that. And, but that's what we're talking about. I'm not patting myself on the back. because I wished I hadn't, you know. But my point is, I made an oath to someone. I gave them my word. Yes, if you come today, this afternoon, I will give you my car, sell you my car for a certain price, and I will, hold it for you. And so here's that situation where even if it hurts, well, it hurt a little bit. It hurt my pocketbook, hurt my wallet, and irritated me a little bit. And so, but that's the kind of person that has integrity, whose walk is blameless, who says one thing and keeps that, keeps his word. So let's see what else is said here. Looks like the Zimmermans have said something here. I used to tell my fifth grade students that not every thought in their mind should fly out of their mouth. Amen to that. That's probably true for adults too. I may determine that someone is vile, but I probably need to keep that to myself. Yeah, of course. Excellent advice. Maybe just make that assessment and react accordingly, but just keep your mouth closed, right? Keep it zipped. Anyway, there's that. Then there's one more thing there at the beginning of verse 5, as David has laid out this character, this person of integrity. This is the kind of person who can be with God, who can dwell and be with God. He says, who lends his money without usury and does not accept a bribe against the innocent. So now we're going to talk about, we've talked about promise keeping and treating neighbors and speech. He's going to talk about how do you treat those that are disadvantaged? How do you use your money, particularly in those situations? And so here's a situation where David says, you don't lend your money, who you do lend your money without usury. And usury meaning exorbitant interest rates when someone is at a disadvantage. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I've never used one of these places. I have talked to people. I'm discouraged by what I do know. I confess I don't know a whole lot, so this is somewhat risky. But some of the quick cash places that you see that charge pretty high prices for cashing your wages, your work check, your salary, whatever. I kind of view those as places that would be guilty of this, of lending with usury, not without it. And so we're to be people who are generous. And I know there's a lot of wisdom that needs to be made if you look at the Proverbs about lending people, and the borrower is servant to the lender and things like that. But the point is, David, I think, is making that we're to be generous and we're to use our money to help people, not take advantage of them. And we're also not to accept a bribe against the innocent. When we're in positions of power, we're not to play games with someone else's life or livelihood. And so we're to be people who are truly people of integrity. And anyway, here's this long list. It's 5:29, so we're going to bring this to a point here. Here's this list of at least 10 things. And some of them are like sub points under there, like who keeps his oath even when it hurts. I would say that's 2. So there's at least 10 things, though, that are in regards to the character of a person who can be in God's presence. Now, we know we're saved by grace, but we're saved by grace to live a holy life, to be used by God and useful to Him. And so this still applies, I think, in our New Testament Christian walk. And so here's the promise at the end of this that I think really kind of gilds it all together. He who does these things will never be shaken. He who does these things will never be shaken. You don't have to apologize if you always tell the truth, right? You'll never have to cover up. You'll never have to make excuses. Same thing as if when you give an oath to somebody or you give your word to somebody and you keep it. You don't ever have to explain or cover it up, or the way you use your money. If you're generous with your money and you don't take advantage of people, if you treat your neighbors kindly, even if they don't treat you kindly back, you can always look in the mirror, right? You can say, my walk is blameless. Nobody's perfect, but we can strive for integrity, doing the right thing. And so that's the kind of person, even in this Old Testament context, David is laying this list out, this list of an unshakable life that nothing, he who does these things will never be shaken. You will not be shaken if you do these things. And, how often today do you feel like we have a character crisis? And I'm talking in my lifetime. I've observed a disappearance or a lack of character among leaders, among men, among women, mature Christians. A major lapse of character or judgment. And again, so I'm not talking about are you being perfect. The psalmist says to be blameless, but this is what we're called to, the standard. This is our standard. We are called to live a blameless life of integrity. We're not saved because of this. We can't earn God's favor. But when we live this way, we're not separated from God. We are aspiring to be holy as He's holy. And so, anyway, I love this psalm. The aspects of it. One other thing I think I would throw out there that might be interesting to note. When Jesus mentioned the greatest command and the second one that's likened to it, the first one was what? Love your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Okay. The second one was love your neighbor as yourself. So, in other words, you love God, but you also love your neighbor. Well, look at these commands and look at this psalm. The first part, who can be with God? Who can love God? Who can, that vertical relationship? And then the second part, the walk who's blameless, who doesn't slander his neighbor and it's the horizontal. So here we see the vertical and the horizontal relationship. For what that's worth, I think that's an interesting thing. So, any other comments here on Psalm 15? I would encourage you to take these 5 verses and to kind of parse this list out. And you may think, okay, David says there's 10 things, but really I see 5 or 6 things and they're kind of grouped together a certain way, or I see 4 things and they're grouped together a certain way. But there are some themes there that we could all agree on, I think, about the way we treat our neighbors and the way we keep our word and the way we use our money and so on and so forth. So it's a call to have integrity and to live the life we're supposed to live so that we can be in God's presence. And anyway, I love this. It's very different than the Old Testament commands: do not murder, do not kill. It's a call to a higher way, which we have here in this psalm. So, all right. Hopefully, this has been a blessing to you. Again, much different than some of the other psalms that we have studied. Some of the other ways that we've looked at the other psalms. As we're doing this, just one closing thought. Isn't it amazing how different the Psalms are even the Psalms by David. He's got variety in the things that he has written and shared here. So how different is Psalm 15 as we talked about from Psalm 23 or whatever that he wrote? It's just a different expression, and so that should give us some encouragement that the way we talk to God and the way we express ourselves and encourage each other can be very, very, very different. So, all right, Psalm 15. The study is yours. Now, take those 5 verses, apply them, dig through them, do some more study on your own, and I think you'll be blessed by it. Have a great evening. God bless. I saw on here that Jeff had said that Randy Bolin, let's see, is now at home. So glad to see that, and we'll make that update in the office on our stuff when we send notes out. And anyway, go with God. Have a great night, and we will talk to you soon.